bet it's a bullet gonna get the last laugh.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about Tekken 8 DLC. You know, we're 3 years into the lifespan and players are starting to reflect a little bit on what came before. What did we get over these 3 years? And when you look back at the DLC characters, you know, HypeUpGig has put this little graph together where we can see all of them. Some people are not liking what they're seeing. This is obviously something that's been stated so many times already, is how a lot of the characters that's DLC in Tekken 8 were DLC in Tekken 7. Now, I will preface that by saying that Tekken 7 had one of the biggest rosters in Tekken history. Tekken Tag Tournament 2 had the biggest, but at the same time, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 had a lot of clones on the roster. They had 3 versions of Eddies, 2 Lilies, 2 Laws. It was 2 Bobs. It was a lot of clones there. And if you remove all of those clones, I think Tekken 7 has the biggest roster. So of course, when you move forward in the future of Tekken and you start adding characters to other games, it's going to be Tekken 7 roster copy and paste. There's no real way around that because Tekken, unlike Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, has a huge core roster. There's about 20 or 25 characters that if you remove, it won't feel like Tekken. And we say that for characters who aren't even that popular, like a Lei Wulong. People say it's not Tekken without him. So imagine if you were to remove a Steve Fox, a Feng Wei, a Dragunov, a Brian, a Asuka, a Lily, some of these other characters. It would be chaos. So that's one thing I will say about Tekken 8 is that they're just struggling from success. They created so many iconic characters, so many beloved characters, and when it comes time to do a 30-something character roster, it's going to be very hard to turn that 50 into a 30. Especially when you're added in new characters alongside that. But with that aside, looking at this, I personally think that there's a deeper issue here that Tekken is dealing with. The reason why we get so many repeat DLCs is because Tekken has a different problem of being unwilling to let go of some of their unpopular characters. We can see the data, and we've been able to see the data for about a decade now. And even before then, we had Harada tweets and we had statements from the developers to go back a little bit further and talk about the usage of certain characters. With that data, we can see that some of these characters are not played at all. And I understand every character in the game is loved by someone, but when you talk about filling up a roster of, played characters, and then you put some useless character who hasn't been played for 4 games straight, it's crazy. And I know a lot of these characters had the they're important in story, right? The story is magically somehow super important when it comes time to build out a roster of Tekken. And I think a lot of those characters who had the story bonus lost their story importance with Tekken 8. But then also something else that I would like to highlight is what Mortal Kombat does. Mortal Kombat has story important characters as well, but they don't force those characters to be playable. Those characters, it's perfectly fine if they appear in the story, if they participate in the story, but they're not necessarily playable. And Mortal Kombat even goes a step forward where sometimes you can even fight against that character in the story and they not be playable. Now, I know people kind of dislike that because they say if you have the move list in the game, let us experience it. I would even say the same thing with Azazel, where there should be some kind of boss mode. So I get that point. I get where they're coming from. But I think Tekken 8 already walks down this path a little bit with characters like Leo's dad. Huge role in the story, a lot of dialogue. We even saw in the files of the game that he was supposed to be playable at one point in time, but the developers decided not to do that. I think some of these low usage characters who are important to the story can just be that. Characters in the story that you see, you interact, they're alive and well, and then that's really it. Putting them on a roster solely for purpose, for story, is getting redundant, and it push icons to DLC. Eddie, Heihachi, Armor King, Fakamram, Anna, those characters should not be DLC, because when you push those characters because of story, then characters like Bob, Miguel, Julia, Lei, and others are pushed even further. And you have this cascading problem where if we do get a season 4, I think we will. If we do get a season 4 and they do put Miguel in the game, people will only have like a year or so to play him. People will only have like a year to play Lei. This was the problem with Lydia, is that she released so late into the lifespan of Tekken 7, so people were disappointed when they saw her return again in Tekken 8. They was like, bro, you just sold us this character like 2 years ago. You're doing it again? So that will probably be a similar thing for whatever character shows up in season 4 or season 5 if we get there. You know, PS5 is being delayed because of storage issues and whatnot. GPU, AI, different subject. But a lot of people are looking at this and they're not liking what they see, and they wanted the Tekken developers to get a little bit more creative with the characters they put out there. I do like Yujiro's inclusion because he kind of shows that Tekken can go above and beyond, get some of these beloved characters a part of anime and, you know, mangas, and they can reach into that world. I always talk about how Bandai Namco is the king of anime because they have the rights to so many of those franchises. This character being one of the biggest reveals in Tekken history, they should probably do more of that. This screenshot here is Arslan's take on it. You can see he dislikes the whole entire season 1, most of season 2. He put a throw up emoji on Anna. He really despises that character, even though he used it to win a tournament. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. You're a pro player after all. It's not about what you like. It's about winning, money, success. And he got his hands dirty with Anna, right? But he loves Marizu, check mark with 100 emoji. And then he loves Kunimitsu, Roger, and Yujiro. He doesn't like Bob. So this is Arslan's take. Another interesting take, this one had the most likes in response to this, and it says, not even trying to hate, but this is probably the worst DLC lineup I've ever seen in my life. Almost everyone here has base roster energy. This discussion got so big to where it generated a story. It says Tekken fans split on DLC character picks. A poll asked how many of the 12 DLC fighters from season 1 through 3 excites players, listing Eddie Gordo, Heihachi, and it lists out all the characters, right? Many mark just 1 through 4 as must-haves, gripping that the characters like Eddie and Lydia feel like base roster holdovers or pricey fan service. While Heihachi's return draws ire, Anna leads positive for her mix-ups and tournament wins, with Yujiro, Roger, and Kunimitsu also earning cheers and making cause for broader Season 4 surprises. The thing you got to talk about this as well is how there's two things that's happening. There's people who want their character to return. If I was to ask all of you who want Miguel, everyone would probably raise their hand. But then if I also was to ask how many of you are tired of repeat DLC from Tekken 7, probably everyone would raise their hand. So that's really the issue, is that they can't, but they can. They can't, but they should. Creating new characters is kind of controversial because, as we see with Tekken 8, some of the most hated characters in the game are the new characters. Marizu, Victor, Reina, Azazina. Some people love those characters. I think Reina is the best of the 4, but they're all teetering on that side of controversy. And for whatever reason, Tekken players do not like new characters that much, and they would much rather prefer the old. And I think the developers are trying to create new characters, create new ideas, because someone sent me a tweet where Harada was talking about how Claudio was designed for a new generation of players. And even though I think that was a failure because Claudio is one of the least played characters in the game, you could just see where their mindset is at, where they're trying to bring in a new audience. But this is where guest characters come in, and they could win it over a whole lot of people. They just have to choose the right character. Don't do a Clive, don't do a Negan, do a Yujiro, do something big, spectacular, and then boom, easily your sales go up. Players be begging and wishing for a lot of things, and I 100% get it. I be begging and wishing and wanting a big booty Latina, but it's not gonna happen, right? You don't always get what you want.